Here we are working on this precious garden quilt. Let's see if I can answer some of your sewing questions. Let's talk about seam allowance. What is a seam allowance and why is it important? The seam allowance is the distance between the edge of your fabric and your seam. And it's important because whatever pattern you're following assumes that you're following the seam allowance that they tell you in the directions. If the seam allowance that you're using is different than what's stated in the directions, then the cut of your fabric would not be the right size. Most of the patterns used to be made with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. That's what they taught in home ec, and that's what everybody used. Now most of the patterns that I see anyway are all 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I tell y'all to get a 1/4 inch seam by following the edge of your fabric with the edge of your presser foot, but I'm told not all presser feet are 1/4 inch, so you definitely want to check that. There's a metal plate underneath your presser foot that lays flat on the base of your sewing machine, and it has some guides on it. 1/4 inch, 5/8 inch, 1/2 inch. If you look, there's some guides etched in that metal plate, and if your pattern calls for a larger seam allowance, you can absolutely use one of those as your guides, or get a piece of tape or a magnetic seam guide, whatever works for you. I hope this was helpful. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher, and I would love for you to come sew with me.